Hey there. Tomorrow, June 8th, is National Heat Stroke Prevention Day. I saw Lori's post earlier today, or yesterday. Lori is the mother of Zachary Martin. Died in Florida a few years ago from exertional heat stroke. Unfortunately, he is one of several athletes who have died playing football in the state of Florida the last few years. Exertional heat stroke is the number 3 leading cause of death in student athletes. It is preventable, and we can prevent it in so many different ways. We must think about this, and we must always work to prevent exertional heat stroke because there's zero excuses for it. Whether it's on the prevention side, as we must look at on a regular basis with staying hydrated, acclimatizing ourselves to athletics and to the heat, and taking temperatures prior to athletics and understanding wet bulb globe temperature. A heat index isn't very accurate for us in athletics, and so for athletics we should be using a device known as a wet bulb globe temperature monitor. The most common and probably what is considered to be the gold standard is made by a company called the Kestrel unit. And at school we own a Kestrel unit, but at home here I have a cheaper version of a heat stress monitor. And this temperature is not your normal temperature reading. It's not your normal heat index reading, but instead it takes into account wind speed, sun, the temperature, and the humidity to create this, what we refer to as wet bulb globe temperature. And we must utilize that because in athletics, we don't sit in the shade. And that's what we measure heat index with, is in the shade. But instead, we must measure those temperatures on the field. That is our first step, is measuring temperatures and adapting our workouts to those temperature readings. And we utilize a chart that talks about different zones based on that wet bulb globe temperature. And there is a zone that we reach where we shut down athletics for the day. This week, the weather forecasters are calling for heat indexes over 100 degrees here in Dallas. It's going to be hot. But we have to be ready for that. And we can still work out. We just need to make sure that we don't work out in the middle of the day. We need to make sure that we're hydrated, we're getting enough sleep at night, and we're coming prepared for our workouts. And we also have to be prepared to adapt our workouts as the day goes on. But secondly, we must be prepared to treat an exertional heat stroke patient when it happens. The gold standard is a cold tub. That person needs to be immersed in the tub in ice water, as cold as we can get the water, until their body temperature gets back down to below 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, exertional heat stroke is said to be when an athlete or anybody has central nervous system dysfunction and a rectal body temperature of above 105 degrees. So, in athletics and for athletic trainers, the gold standard treatment and gold standard diagnosis for exertional heat stroke is use of a rectal thermometer. And that scares a lot of people. But it is the gold standard, and it is the only accurate way of taking a core body temperature in an athlete who is working out. So, once we have a temperature, we have a diagnosis of exertional heat stroke, then we must get them into a cold tub. And we must cool them before we transport them to the hospital. So anytime that we suspect exertional heat stroke, we need to take a temperature, we need to cool them, and we need to call 911. But even once EMS arrives, we need to keep them in that tub until that temperature is down, because we are losing valuable time if they're riding in the ambulance and they're not getting cooled down. It is 100% preventable if we can treat an athlete and get them cooling and get their body temperature back down under 105 degrees in the first 30 minutes. Unfortunately, we have many athletes across the country who have died of exertional heat stroke because we didn't act appropriately, because coaches didn't act appropriately, because schools didn't have the appropriate medical care. And even sometimes when they have the appropriate medical care, the athletic trainers have failed. Cool first, transport second, and let's stop exertional heat stroke deaths.